everyone, it's Sister Wives, season 15, episode 3, Robyn the Peacemaker. And I feel like that title of that episode is just begging for comment. I feel like already, someone said this last week in the comments, and I absolutely agree, which is this does not feel like a new season.
It's not a new season. It's the continuation of season 14. Right.
We agree. That's exactly what it is. We pick up right where we left off. There's no sensation of any closure. I assume...
Or COVID.
Well, we're still not there yet, and I'm having a really hard time
season 14.
Figuring out what things are happening in what order. So, we get a previously on Sister Wives, and we go, it's the whole thing all over again. You're like, oh, which is such their thing. We get something actually interesting, which is Meri and Aubrey come to visit. I'm really confused as to whether this is... I feel like this might be edited from a later time because they talk about missing Christmas again. And so I think this was filmed in January, but everything else is in September. I could be wrong. Doesn't really matter. Other than it's very confusing because they said we're going to move in 6 months. And then on Twitter, they're saying it's going to be so great when they move back. And so... either it got hugely delayed because of the pandemic, which would be totally understandable, but I would think that with the pandemic they'd even be more likely to move, which is what everyone else in America did, which was like, I'm getting out of Dodge, no reason to be in a big city when literally everything's locked down, when you could live somewhere like Utah that's cheaper. If you're going to sit in an apartment, at least you can sit in a cheaper apartment and you can get out. Like, we're really lucky because we can go out and walk and not see another human being because we're just live in a rural area. Anyway, they've decided, I do feel really bad because it seems like Audrey, I think I might have called her Aubrey, Audrey is kind of depressed. She kind of like she was on the verge of tears the whole conversation. When she talked about Chicago, I get it. I mean, we lived somewhere, we didn't live in a place like Chicago, but we lived someplace and I never went anywhere. The traffic was bad. When you got there, there was no parking. Then there were crowds and lines. And so we didn't go anywhere. And I don't know, other than our circumstances, they kind of allude to mental health and stuff, but there's no reason, if you can leave someplace and you're miserable, leave. I mean, that's all there is to it. I think they were really only there for school.
Yeah, like every wife of Kody.
Right. Let's get some symbolism going back to the actual episode.
If you're miserable, leave.
But anyway, so they're going to move to Salt Lake. What was funny was I had someone on Twitter was saying, why would they move to Chicago?
To Salt Lake.
No, why would they move to Salt Lake? Because Chicago's so diverse, they're going to feel so uncomfortable in Salt Lake.
Have you ever been there? Like, no.
No.
You clearly haven't because you don't know. The last time we were there, we went to this beautiful, awesome, very tasty restaurant.
Red Iguana. Or actually, Red Iguana 2.
And we're pretty sure we're the only hetero couple in there.
Yeah, so it was funny because they said that. I had this
literally.
I had this vague memory. And I was like... I remember we went to Red Iguana, which is like
awesome.
It was an awesome Mexican food, but it's like pre-Aztec Mexican food. It's all moles. It's not like the kind of Mexican food you normally get at a Mexican restaurant. It's a very specific subgenre. Anyway, and we were in there, and a lesbian couple came in with their kids, and we're like, oh. Then we look around, and there's a gay couple on a date, and another gay couple. And we look around, and we seriously looked around, and we were the only male-female couple in there.
Under 70, at least. There might have been a couple old couples.
I mean, there might have been families, but I think most of the families we saw were same-sex couples. And so I messaged my friend who is a lesbian who lives in Salt Lake City, and I was like, is there such a thing as I know there's gay bars. Are there gay restaurants? Well, the food was worth it, even if we were the standouts. But anyway, my point being that there are areas of Salt Lake that are...
Of Utah.
That are not in Utah, but specifically our experience in Salt Lake show that there are definitely areas where you would not be the only people in the restaurant.
The only un-Mormon.
Yeah, exactly. So, because that was some people's comments, why would you go to Salt Lake? But Audrey grew up there. Meri has family. Although I will say Salt Lake is not particularly close. I mean, it's closer than Chicago is. But Flagstaff's, I mean...
A bit away.
It's still a good drive, but I guess maybe the difference between getting on a plane and getting in a car. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, that was the only interesting part of the episode.
It was.
And the rest of it was rehashing...
A lot of Kody whining.
The whole episode. The whole episode was Kody being mad. And this is, for the past 15 seasons, every time something happened, Kody would be like... well, I've got 4 wives, and I know that you monogamous men think you have it hard, but I have it worse. Like, that's kind of his attitude about everything.
And now it's like, oh, this is what God called us to do, and it's terrible, and we all hate it.
Yeah, and he's like cursing, and he's talking about how basically everything, he doesn't like anything related to polygamy. He doesn't like anything, like at one point he said...
Except his children. According to him. Who knows if that's true.
Yeah, he talks about his kids all the time. Okay, so what happens is they have a family meeting. Everybody shows up with no clue what's going to happen, which just is so weird to me. It's so weird to me. Just because you go, if he supposedly has 4 equal relationships. Anyway, Christine's house finally sold in Vegas. I guess some people were confused about that. So she kind of is like, we need to... so the kids are going to ask, now the house is sold, are we going to move on to the property? I think a very reasonable question. I think a question that all 4 wives, Kody doesn't want to talk about it. He didn't get his way with a single house, which he tricked them into. You know, this is not like him saying, I want to leave Vegas, get a big piece of property, put 1 big house on it, and then a year later everybody was like, backed out of the plan. He said, we're going to replicate what we have in Vegas, in Flagstaff, bought a property with multiple units on it.
Well, multiple lots.
Multiple lots, like he could have multiple houses, and then presented this tricky idea to have this big house, and people backed out. And a lot of people are saying, well, if you're gonna...
Nobody backed out, just nobody else liked it.
Nobody else was on board. Meri basically said she wasn't interested, but she wasn't going to say that she wasn't interested. She was willing to do... She can't rock the boat, is basically what Meri said.
Yeah.
Robyn said she was semi-interested. Janelle was in, but only if everyone was, and Christine was a hard no. Which, I mean, at least Christine was honest. I feel like a couple other people... I get why Meri didn't, because it wouldn't have done her any good, and her vote doesn't count.
Right.
I don't think... You know, and so anyway, so he just is done. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to do it. And they all do the same. They all made excuses for him, which is like, he doesn't seem to have respect for any of them, but they all make excuses. Oh, well, he gets really excited at the beginning, then he loses energy. Well, he seemed to have all the energy for all the stuff that he's interested in.
Wouldn't that be nice? Oh, yeah, let's start this. Okay, you finish it. You do it.
So all 4 wives agreed, which they have said the whole way through, that's how they work. You know, they don't try to push their agenda on each other. They try to all be respectful. All 4 wives very carefully agreed, well, I think you do raise a good point. I mean, that is a legitimate question, like that kind of... They weren't like, yes, we all agree, but they were definitely like, well, you know... and then he's like, well, maybe all the drama problems are me. And it's like, yeah. Everybody said that.
Been saying it for the last 15 years.
Everyone's been saying it. 10 years.
Whatever.
15 seasons? 7 years? 15 seasons? I don't know. Anyway.
If you know,
and then he's like cussing
evaluate your life.
About, you know, I just don't give a blank anymore. And then right in the middle of this was this flashback, which I don't remember, but they have footage of. People said they saw it in the original season. I have zero memory of this. About them going back to Lehigh to bury the dog. Bury the family dog. I have no memory of this at all. Doesn't mean anything, but it was very, I didn't quite even get what the point was. He like stood there almost crying, and I think it was about not having a home or saying goodbye to the Utah home or something, but I have no idea how it fit in with the rest of this dialogue. And as far as, I mean, if you saw it and you remember and you go, oh, he was trying to make this point, go for it.
Pretty sure he'd substitute any of his wives for that dog.
No, I don't think he likes dogs. Well, he was like crying and like sobbing, but then he's always said he doesn't like dogs. And then, anyway, but I don't get how any of those memories make any explanation for why now he suddenly doesn't want to move forward with surveyors or talking to people. And I'll tell you what, at least the wives planning their houses would be slightly more interesting than
Kody
listening,
whining all the time.
Yeah, than listening to Kody talk about how he's upset that he has to be a husband to 4 wives after he's bragged for all these years. So, Robyn and Meri and Kody have a chat. He goes about how he's bent over backwards for Meri, but this is what basically came out of it in my impression. You tell me if you've heard the same thing, which is that he didn't actually want to talk to her or communicate with her or explain anything, so he tried to do what he thought she wanted but didn't actually want to talk to her, so he just kind of tried to tried to read her mind and then insist that he did the best for her. Things like, she said she didn't want to necessarily build in the trees. So he took it to mean that she didn't want that entire lot. Gave her a different lot. And she was like, well, I thought I could be near the pond. He still hasn't told her that there's a reason why the other family... First of all, this is not a pond. This is not Arrowhead Lake. This is a drainage ditch, as near as I can tell. That apparently,
sure looks like it.
Remember when last year, it was almost down to nothing, and it was just solid mud at the bottom? They make it sound like it's a infinity pool, and it's an irrigation ditch that probably fills up with seasonal water. Like, we got one down there, I'm not letting my kid in it.
Yeah.
It's full of crawdads and leeches. Like... So anyway, they don't want her to build over by that because then she might not give the kids access. And I mean, I don't know all the, there's all these stories about how she was so mean to the kids. That did sound awful, but I'll tell you that I don't necessarily know that I would want young kids playing in an unsupervised pond either. Even with older kids there, like kids drown all the time.
Kids are dumb.
Well,
their brains aren't fully developed and they don't know.
An open pit of water just makes me nervous. We had a river that ran right by our house, and it used to give me nightmares about my son getting out the door and getting to it before I'd notice. Anyway, I don't need to push my phobias on other people. Anyway, so they're out there looking at it. It's the same fight from last year, and Kody won't take any ownership. Instead of just saying, I'm sorry, Meri, I misunderstood. Why don't we just start from scratch and talk this out? Or even saying... I thought that's what you wanted. I thought that's what you said. She says, no, I didn't. Say, okay, then let's just cancel this.
Or I don't know, let's go in a whole new direction and maybe some truth. I hate you. I don't want you part of the family. Why don't you just shut up and go away?
Which is what he says in every interview. He doesn't say go away. He just says, I don't want anything to do with you.
But it would be kind of nice to have some honesty from somebody.
Well, he says it in interviews, and I'm waiting for... Now,
it means something.
This is the thing, though, this is why it's so frustrating, is normally when you start a new season, they've watched the last season. At this point, this is still... still last season, so she still hasn't seen any of these interviews where he's going on and on about how he doesn't wish he hadn't married her, he just wants her to shut up, that kind of thing. They go to flashback to the counseling, which was the worst counseling session I've ever seen. Oh, he keeps going how there's no reason he should carry his burden. Except he claims, they all claim that their spiritual marriage, and I'm using quotes because that's the word they use, their spiritual marriage is as binding to them in a religious fashion as a legal marriage.
Until he loses interest.
Until he loses interest, and then he has no reason to deal with her burden and all that. And it's just so, like, I get, and people get this, well, why are you so nice to Meri? I'm not so nice to Meri. Go back and watch the old seasons. There's quite a few opinions in there. I'm just saying right now, if she is saying, I'm willing to work on this relationship, we can move forward, and he is saying, nope, I don't want to, then you can't claim that there's a marriage. And then listening to him whine about how it's such a burden to deal with his wives. Why would he want to go spend time with her when he has wives he actually likes? And what he actually said was...
Wives with kids.
Wives with kids. Which makes it sound like if she had had more kids, he would have a reason to invest in her. But since she only could have one child, and that one child is gone, then that's all the value to her. It's really what it sounds like he said. Kids at home, he might come over. Meri and I don't want a relationship. Right after there's a thing where she's saying, I'm willing to do it, and he just doesn't seem to want to go forward. I've said it repeatedly that I want to try to mend this, and he doesn't want it.
Here's your sign.
I don't even know what I wrote. Trees, pond, cause, hardest, explain.
Cool.
Monogamous / John's... Oh, they were talking about how monogamy promotes competition between women. And I'm like, I'm married to John. I'm not competitive with... I don't want any of these other women's husbands.
Nobody else competes.
I know. Thank you, baby. I don't have to compete with any other woman for John's attention. We've committed that. John doesn't have to compete for any other man for attention, other than maybe Pocket. Just kidding. That's my little dog that I adore. But my point is that this view that monogamy promotes competition, whereas polygamy promotes like cooperation, is like, how can you even believe that? It it's like polygamy seems to create jealousy just so you can get over it. And it's like, hey, maybe you just don't even need to have it.
Who knew?
John and I are each other's best friends, as evidenced by us watching terrible TV and talking about it. I don't need to compete with anyone for his attention. So it was that bothered me, because that was definitely like a little bit like...
Clearly plural marriage is so good that they all hate each other, so everybody should do it.
Oh man, does next week look spicy though? Oh, probably won't be. It'll probably be some very passive aggressive, almost statements, and then we'll get back to a flashback from 10 years ago.
And some like dog we've never seen.
I mean, people said they remembered it, but I just have no memory of it. Of course, that was probably 90 million years ago. Anyway, hope you guys have a good week ahead of you. Bye.